sensitive topics, the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the official policies or position of Met Radio, Met Media, or Metropolitan State University of Denver. This podcast may include discussions of sensitive or potentially triggering topics. Viewer discretion is advised.
Mature themes. This podcast may contain discussions of mature or sensitive topics that may not be suitable for all audiences. Strategies, suggestions, or opinions shared in this podcast are intended for informational purposes only and do not constitute medical, psychological, or professional advice. Viewers are encouraged to consult a qualified medical professional before acting on any information this podcast may contain. If you are in crisis or need immediate support, please contact a licensed professional or emergency services in your area. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, my name is Levette.
Howdy, y'all. I'm Ben.
And this is Poli-Pop Talk. Hello, my name is Levette, and welcome back to Poli-Pop Talk. Today we have a special guest, and I will allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm really happy to be here. My name is Amie Baca-Oehlert, and I'm a candidate for Colorado's Congressional District 8.
Perfect, Amie, and we are super glad to have you as our first guest. We want to take this as an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself to possible future constituents and kind of just have a good time. Yeah. And definitely just have a few questions for you, nothing too serious. If you do want to get into other topics, I'll let you share at the end, just anything that you have any closing statements. But a little less official than a forum would be, right?
Yes.
Alrighty. So, can you repeat your name? So, Amie Baca-Oehlert.
Yes, it's
Oehlert.
like alert, but with an O. Yeah,
Oehlert.
That's how I
okay, because I was like Oehlert, because
yes.
the L-E-R-T is through.
Well, and the O-E confuses people. So yes, it's Amie Baca-Oehlert.
Yeah. Perfect. Just a little bit about your background. We were talking earlier, and you had mentioned that you are part of this teachers union. So what is your everyday like? What is your job title right now?
Right now, I am serving as the executive director of what's called the Denver Uniserve Unit. That's kind of an insider term within the union, but it is 4 local unions of educators that serve Denver public schools. So we have the Denver Classroom Teachers Association, which is the teachers and the counselors, nurses, social workers, but then we also represent DAOP, which is the office professionals, the school secretaries that work in our schools, the facilities managers, FMA, and then the Association of Building, Grounds, and Warehouse Workers. So some of the unions that exist within Denver public schools.
Wow, that seems like quite a lot. So that is awesome. It does sound like you have a lot of information and knowledge, and definitely experience just with what you're doing right now. What did you do before that?
So I started off as a high school language arts teacher teaching high school English at Adams City High School in Commerce City, Colorado, which is Commerce City is one of the cities within the district of Congressional District 8. And then while I was teaching, to make a real long story short, while I was teaching, I went to the University of Northern Colorado and got my master's in school counseling. And then I became a counselor at Northglenn High School in Adams 12. And during my teaching and counseling experience, I was very active in the union because I saw a lot of the things that my students were facing, unsafe drinking water, unhealthy air, but also just lack of funding and all of the things that come into the classroom that impact our students' lives and their learning experiences. For me, it was the union that was really on the forefront of fighting for those things for our students and for our community. So I was very active in the union. I became my local president. So I was president of the District 12 Educators Association. And then in 2012, I was elected as vice president of the Colorado Education Association. And in 2018, I was the first Latina ever elected to lead the Colorado Education Association. And the CEA is our state's largest union, representing nearly 40,000 educators across the state of Colorado.
Wow, we love someone who is a first, especially a Latina.
Yes.
So, Given that you mentioned the unions, and I know we can just assume with being part of unions and supporting unions as much as you have, what party you are affiliated with, but I would just like to ask anyways.
Yes, I am a Democrat.
Perfect. That is wonderful. And then, so you were an English teacher. That just is so great to me. And you went to UNC.
Yes.
I feel like you have so many connections to CD8, just like a lot of different parts of CD8. So how do you think that will help you represent CD8?
Well, I think that being connected to community is so important. And, one of the things that I think is wrong with our system right now is that a lot of our elected officials, especially in Congress, have lost connection to the constituents, to the communities. Right now, I believe we have a broken system in Congress. Congress is really about the wealthy and well-connected and, full of politicians who seem to be looking out for their wealthy and well-connected, millionaires and billionaires that are oftentimes funding their campaigns. And so I really believe that we need to get back to a place, or if we ever were there, but we need to be at a place where we have real people representing, our government is supposed to be of the people, for the people. And so, somebody who's deeply rooted in this community, been an educator, standing up for workers' rights for nearly 30 years, 3 decades, I think that's something that will really help in a candidate and somebody representing in Congress. We need somebody who understands what it's like for the policies to land in their lives.
I heard a lot of feedback from other parties or independents or people who aren't really politically educated. And a lot of what they say is that they're disconnected from everyday Americans' lives. Like politicians that are sitting in Congress right now, a lot of times don't know what it's like to not be able to afford all the groceries you used to be able to afford, or to wonder how you're going to pay rent, or to get laid off and try to receive benefits that maybe aren't as available or not as accessible anymore as they used to be, or not as funded anymore. So we're facing all these problems. Everyday Americans are facing all these problems, and that disconnection is what's making people lose trust in the government.
Yeah, it really is. And, when it seems that our elected officials are more interested in pleasing the wealthy corporations than they are in supporting the constituents who work and live in their communities, that's a problem. And we're seeing that right now. We had Gabe Evans take a vote on the, quote, big, beautiful bill that will kick hundreds of thousands of people off of health care, off of Medicaid, hundreds of thousands of people losing access to food benefits. That has real impacts on our communities, on our abilities, and when you can be so disconnected from the community that you can take a vote like that, we have a problem.
Definitely. And with him specifically, I know he has yet to make it out to specifically my county. Mm-hmm. He has yet to make it there. He's invited plenty of times. I think that people have invited him at least to 2 forums that I know of, or 2 town halls, and he has not shown up. But then weeks following, he shows up in front of the Capitol and is talking up the big, beautiful bill. So that just alone shows you his disconnection. You think that people from Greeley are going to go to Denver just to watch you speak and kind of lie?
And not even have the courage to do, if you believe so strongly in the vote that you took in the bill, do it in the community, do it in the district where you can respond to the constituents. And so, yes, that was certainly one of many very disappointing things.
Yeah, definitely. I remember I somehow signed up for his newsletter. Oh, because it was like, write him a letter about the big, beautiful bill. Mm-hmm. And so we did that. And then somehow I got signed up for his newsletter. So I got one, and I remember seeing one that said, it's not going to cut Medicare and Medicaid funding. And I'm like, that's weird, because I read it. And it does say that. So what do you mean? And I think that taking in somebody in office, not just him, a lot of people, right, taking advantage of the lack of education of American citizens, whether it's civic education, whether it's just everyday, like, current events. People don't really understand how a lot of the system works and how it impacts them. So it's really easy to buy that lie, right, or buy a lie that's given from whether it's this administration, whether it's from another politician. It's just they take advantage of it. And I think that
Yeah. Well,
It's
there's
gotten out
so
of control.
much like skewing of facts as well that is happening. And, that's something that's been a really interesting development in public education is, there's so much access to information through our phones, through, you can, and helping students determine what's real, what isn't, what's a credible source, what isn't. Oftentimes people, you see kids who think just because they Google it and something, that's fact, that's truth. And so it really is important that we teach kids and everyone, in this environment that we're in currently, like how do we discern facts and who are we listening to? And it does seem that this current administration has a way of skewing data and facts, and it's very concerning.
It is very concerning. I think you had mentioned your husband's a teacher as well.
Yes,
a civics teacher or social studies teacher.
Yes,
right?
My husband he's actually a middle school principal.
Oh yes,
right now. But we met as teachers at Adams City High School. I was teaching language arts. He was teaching social studies, and we ended up
that's great.
dating, getting married, and yes, we have 3 kids. I have a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, about to be 15, and a 13-year-old. So
perfect.
Very, very much immersed in the education world, and
Are you? Do you kind of understand the social media aspect of their teenagehood right now, or is that kind of difficult to comprehend? Because I have a difficult time. I talk to a 19-year-old and I'm like, what's happening? What are you talking? They're like, oh, this exists, or did you know you can do this? I'm like, what are you doing? What?
Yeah,
that seems concerning.
It's very concerning. As a parent, I've had a lot, and this is something again that I think makes me qualified to run for Congress, because again, when I look at Congress, I don't see many everyday people, moms, teachers, union members. And it's, again, as a parent, trying to navigate that social media landscape. I mean, I remember the battles, when my kids were younger, begging for a cell phone, and then as they got into middle school and high school, begging for social media. And there's a lot of, in one way, you want your kids to explore and be independent, and but in another way you have to be very careful about what they're exposed to. And so certainly they know a lot of things that the lingo they use and some of the things they say but I also have a deep concern and worry about the impacts of social media, of technology, and just the amount of time and the it
gives me a report on my phone of how much time. Do you get that report of how much time you've spent on screen time? Do you know what your average number usually
it's
is?
too much, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Mine's like a shift.
Yeah.
But I do work in social media, so I am working a lot on my phone.
Well,
so it's
that's
there's
the
that.
thing. Yes, yeah.
So.
I mean, and it's a good and a bad thing. Like my email is on my phone, so you never have a way to disconnect. And I think that's true with our kids too. They can't ever disconnect, and it's very different from how I grew up.
Well, yeah, that's how cyberbullying happened. And remember that when that came out, I was in middle school, and I was like, what is even happening?
Yeah.
I'm like, just turn it off. But you can't. You literally can't, because then it disconnects you from your friends, or disconnects you from the enjoyment that you get out of those things. So it's just wild. We can go to, these were questions from my co-host Ben specifically, because I was kind of mine was a little background section right here. Oh, let's talk about food needs and healthcare. I know we kind of touched on that with the financial insecurity our district faces. What are some issues that you have seen, and how do you plan to tackle them?
Well, being an educator, you see a lot of things come into the school building, into your classroom. And so I have seen firsthand the impacts and the effects of things like food insecurity, lack of access to health care, lack of access to mental health supports. That has been a significant challenge that, we're facing. again, in our schools, but as a society. Because what comes into our classrooms is really reflective of what's going on in our communities. And so, when kids don't have a full belly, they can't learn. Same thing is how, many of their parents are facing some of the same challenges. They don't have an ability to put food on the table, not only for their kids, but for themselves. So you can't go to school on an empty belly. You can't go to work on an empty belly and be successful. So many of our, just things, everyday things have become so out of reach for so many. Many of our educators are having to work 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet, buy groceries, again, everyday things. So many of our families are literally just one healthcare issue away from bankruptcy. We have a lot of challenges.
I say that all the time, that you're one incident away from being bankrupt, and that shouldn't be a concern in what people consider the richest country in the world.
Right. And I myself have, because of the healthcare plan, that we're on, we have a health care plan, which is a high deductible coinsurance. So you have to pay upfront for a test. So you have to literally decide between, do I have money for my kid to get the strep test, or do we buy groceries this week? Many families are in that conundrum, and so many will forego accessing health care, again, because they have to make those difficult decisions. And you're right, and there used to be, this belief, and I think there still is, that if you just work hard enough, you can, get by. Yeah. And really, what we've seen is the system is really rigged against people getting by. People are working very hard and they cannot get by. And that's why we need people in Congress who are going to stand up for working people, not cater to the wealthy corporations, but actually cater to working people who have real needs.
Yeah, and I like how a lot of people campaign on that focus, and then when they get in there, it's a completely different story. But you having that experience and actually going, you just saying that about your kid, I think that is just, it would resonate with so many people that I think that it just makes you a great candidate.
Yeah.
And just the way you speak, you actually know how to talk. You actually know how to talk and speak publicly, I'm sure. And I'm just looking forward to where this is going to go.
Yes.
I think CD8, it's one of Colorado's newest congressional districts. I've mentioned this in a previous podcast. But it was blue, and then it's flipped to red. I've heard a couple political scientists say that it probably is just going to remain a purple county or a purple district. So I'm I hope not. Just given who lives within the district, I don't think that would be fair representation to have it be a purple county. But that's just my thoughts on that.
Kind of my experience as being the president of the Colorado Education Association, and sort of how that impacts my, or ability. Influences my ability to serve in Congress. And, there's many ways that it does. I mean, when I was a local president, I was the lead negotiator for our bargaining team for 8 years. And, so you have that experience about bargaining contracts. And there's a lot that you learn in negotiations. And a lot of what's done in Congress is about negotiating on policy. And, so I've learned technical things like that, how to negotiate. And then, of course, as the president of the CEA, I was very active in legislation and policy building. And, so I have a lot of those hard skills, I guess I would say. But at the same time, I think some of the bigger things that I learned were really how to work with diverse people. I mean, a lot of people think that the union, everybody thinks the same. And that is so far from the truth. The union is not monolithic. We have our members, our educators, and our educators are representative of the communities in which they live. And so we have members that are all over the political spectrum. And, we face very difficult issues. And so I had to lead through a lot of divisive times and on a lot of divisive issues. For example, one I can think of, is should teachers carry guns? You would think that, or some people might think that all teachers feel the same about that, but that is not true. And so I really had to learn, and I think it's something that I'm really good at, and to go out and listen to people and hear their views, hear their perspectives, and then come to a decision that's representative and reflective of the whole. And so, again, it's a lot of those experiences that have led me to a spot to, where those skills can translate into being in elected office.
Definitely. When it comes to Congress right now we're shut down, right? And that is, and we know we can say why. But I think that what lacks a lot in a lot of current congressional members is that they don't have that. They don't know how to negotiate. They don't really know how to problem solve or work with the opposing side, right? It's more like empty promises and like, maybe we'll do that, maybe we won't, or eventually we'll get to you, just give us what we want now kind of thing. And I think you being able to negotiate is going to really help that. And if I do ever see you on Congress, I hope that you go viral on a TikTok where you're just like reading someone to filth, because I think that would be great. I think that would be wonderful, and I feel like you can definitely do it. But behind closed doors, actually be able to get the work done, right? I think that you could do that.
Yeah.
It sounds like you could do that.
Yes, absolutely. And I've had to do that so many times, and it is what's required. I think like certainly you have to stand strong, stand up for the things that you believe in. But that requires, again, a negotiation, a coming together. And I really do think we need somebody who also knows how to organize and how to bring people together. And that's a big part of, being a leader in the union is really about organizing people. And, we're seeing a lack of that in our current Congress, and in a lot, not just at the national level, in the state level as well, down to the local level in some cases. And so we do need people who know how to organize, know how to bring people together, and really, win in a fight.
No, definitely. That is, I think, so that kind of brings me into my next question. What do you think that voters should know when picking a candidate? What do you think they should consider and look out for?
Well, I actually think voters should really look for somebody who is showing up in the community and, not just look at what is the party affiliation behind their name, because what I think is happening right now is so many people are just voting for the strict, party. And I have to believe that what we're seeing represented right now, especially on the federal level, is not representative of the values that many people hold. And so, again, you have to look at what are the values that somebody holds. What do they stand for? Who are they representing? And you do need to look at what is their background? What is their experience? I think somebody who is rooted in the community, who has deep ties to the community, is important in any congressional district, but really in CD8, as you were pointed out earlier, where this is a diverse district, where, and it is very purple, or, it was designed to be highly competitive, to be a swing district. And so you really need somebody who is invested in the community and willing to show up for the community.
I think people on the opposing party would say that Democrats are impossible to talk to and that they don't want to have those conversations. And I feel like what I have seen is a lot of them do want to have those conversations. It's just it doesn't happen. So just by what I'm hearing from you, it kind of seems like you would make sure those conversations would happen. And I think that it's a good reflection of the effort that you're willing to put toward.
You know, you have to be willing to have conversations. And I think, you know, one of the things that I think that's so wrong with what's happening right now is we've allowed an environment to fester where we are dehumanizing people. Yeah. And that, you know, and it's being done intentionally from some leaders at the top where, you know, because when you dehumanize somebody, when you take away their humanity, it's then easier to ignore them, to say, I'm not going to have that conversation. But when, you know, I can sit down and see somebody as a mom or as, you know, a worker, somebody who just, and have that conversation, that is really important when we can just say, you know, you may think differently than I. We may have different beliefs, but here are the things, you know, that bring us together. So, yeah, being able to have those conversations and really see people as humans is one way that we can, you know, get over a lot of this divide.
When it comes to people even being able to display that effort, I think you just have to be energized enough to want to do that, and kind of have hope that doesn't die, right? And so I think that a lot of people do share the same values, right? At the end of the day, a lot of people do still love America, and we love this country, and we want to do what's best for this country, whether that look like what's happening now or something else. And I think that people a lot of times share the same insecurities around food and healthcare and just costs of living and all those things. So at its core, even people who are like really leaning into the propaganda and just the radicalness, I think at their core, they have the same concerns and they're feeling the same insecurities. And being able to be looked at as a person and have that shared empathy is where we need to get.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times they don't think of, like, do you remember the golden rule? Did you ever teach this in school?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, what is it?
Treat others as you'd like to be treated.
Okay,
yes.
I think that we all forgot that. I remember hearing that so many times, and I was like, well, I'm not going to treat everybody how I want to be treated because, honestly, I'd rather not even be here. Like, most of the time. But, yeah, I just always thought, like, that was kind of silly. You know, you don't really think about it. But you kind of do live by it, or a lot of people live by it. And then you kind of meet people who don't, and you're like, what is going on? Like, what happened to the, if you were in my shoes kind of thing? And then if you think about, like, political philosophers, there was always, like, somebody who was either, like, it's all for one, or, like, we're not all good until, or none of us are good until we're all good, right? Like, that idea.
Yeah.
And it was, like, what happened to that? What happened to that wholeness and that unity?
Yes.
Like, it's somebody put up a fence and said, this is mine, and all of a sudden, everything just spiraled downhill.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
You know, I can really, one of the things that I tried to think about when, you know, in like all the rhetoric and talk around immigration and, you know, and I hear some of the really awful things that are said and, you know, people being accused of. And I think back, like I said, I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. And I know deeply that feeling of I would do anything for my kids to ensure their safety, to ensure that they're protected, to ensure that they have a future. And that's where I can really relate to somebody who, I mean, would take oftentimes years-long journey to try to come to a country just to give their child that vision of hope, that vision of opportunity. And why on earth would we stop that, you know? And so, I mean, I believe strongly in a pathway to citizenship. And, you know, again, I think we have to look at the core of what's driving people, you know, to do what they're doing. Majority of people who are coming to this country are coming here for what this country was founded on, the land of opportunity. And so how do we create a system that provides that opportunity? And so, you know, I think, again, we have to go back to those core values, those things that can connect us, something like understanding that a mother, a father, would move mountains to ensure that their children had a brighter, better future. And, let's build a country, let's build policy that works for that and not about how do we other and, shut people out.
Exactly. And I love that you brought up immigration. I was hesitant to do so just because I never know.
It's a tough topic, but,
yeah.
Again, we have to be willing to talk about it.
Definitely.
And we're never going to get to places of solutions if we just stay stuck in, like I'm over here and you're over here.
Yeah.
Like we have to talk about it. And I really do believe we can come to policy agreements on these things if we're willing to. I think right now there's, some electeds are not willing to have the conversations because they don't want to come off of their position. Again, in negotiations, you start at a place and you're going to end up somewhere in the middle. And we have to get back to having those conversations and moving to policy. Our government is not functioning right now. Not only are we literally shut down, but even when, we weren't in a literal shutdown, the government was essentially shut down because it was not operating, in a way that is intended to do.
Yeah. Have you ever watched Why Did I Get Married 2?
No.
It's a Tyler Perry movie. Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's Why Did I Get Married? And then it's a bunch of married couples that go out and they go to a vacation home. They get together and they do this all the time, like once a year. And the 1 year, everything kind of, people get divorced and things happen. And then the next year, other people get divorced and other things happen. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because one of the husbands, while his wife was deciding to leave him, said, you can only fight with someone who's willing to get in the ring with you. And I just can't help but think that's a lot of times Republicans right now.
Yeah.
So we can't fight with them if they're not in the room.
Yeah.
Like I heard AOC and Bernie Sanders literally stating, like, they're not here. Like, they left. Yeah. They're on vacation. They think this is a vacation. And that just makes it all the more difficult for us to prove that we want to get the work done. But
yeah, I mean, literally before the shutdown started, the Democrats were begging to negotiate, saying, let's negotiate. And the Republicans responded by saying there is nothing to negotiate. Well, that's not true.
Works.
Yeah, it's not how it works. Like, there's always room, and that's what our government system is about. It's about debate, negotiation, like bringing ideas forward and then taking votes. Well, when you're not even willing to, have the discussions, have the debate, have the hearings, like you're just, we are not going to get anywhere that way. And so this is why we really need change in our current structure. It's definitely time for new leadership and some change.
Awesome. I think that's about all we have time for. Real quick, I don't know if you want to maybe talk about a pop culture subject, but it is kind of political as well, if you're willing to. But the Bad Bunny Super Bowl situation.
I cannot believe this is even a thing that we are talking about. And it just, in the end, I mean, I just have to say it just makes me sad that, first of all, it makes me sad as an educator that there are so many people who don't understand or know that Bad Bunny is an American citizen.
Yes.
That Puerto Rico is a territory, and that if you are born in Puerto Rico, you are an American citizen. Yeah. So that one hurts my heart as an educator. Like,
I thought so.
Yes, we need, how is this a thing? But also just that we are at a place where we cannot celebrate culture, that we can't celebrate all different types of music and language. And, again, that's what actually makes us great as a country is all of that diversity. And I think there are a lot of people that, that celebrate that, and that it's going to be an amazing halftime show, and it will be, you know. And there's always the critics. Nobody ever loves the halftime show. I mean, that's the thing. No matter who it is, like, you never get like, oh, that was all great. Somebody hates it. Somebody loves it. Yeah. The last, several years. But this counter halftime show that's being...
the Turning Point USA
Yes, that's being promoted is...
When are you going to stop the dividing?
Yes, that's what I was going to say, is it just furthers the division and the, all that's wrong with our current reality, so I'll be watching the Bad Bunny halftime show, I'll tell you that.
So will I, because I accidentally watch the halftime show every year for some reason. I don't like football, but I accidentally watch it every single year.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Everybody always has thoughts.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Like, we can have thoughts on it, but that it's gotten to this point where there's going to be this alternative.
I was going to use the opportunity to maybe suggest anybody that has power to do this, to bring back geography classes.
Well,
please.
They should still be happening, but
I never had one.
You didn't?
No, and that's what I think. I think that has to be the problem, right? How do people not know these things? But I didn't have a geography class.
Well, that's probably a whole other podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
Topic that we could go on is kind of the curriculum and what's being taught and who makes those decisions. I mean, that's actually something that's happening right now on a federal level. Is there's this push for a quote patriotic curriculum, and so yes, we at some other time we should have a conversation about that, because it matters what's taught and what isn't.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us here at Poli-Pop Talk today. It was a pleasure having you, and I can't wait to get this out so that people can meet you.
Yeah, it was great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, anytime. You are welcome back anytime.
All right. I'll take you up on that.
Awesome.